Welcome everyone. This is Vlad Bogan, CEO of Cromos Pharma. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Today we'll be talking about SWOT analysis of clinical trials and clinical trial activity in former Soviet states. We will be speaking about several countries in separate presentations, and you're very much welcome to participate by sending your questions. And I also want to mention that at the end of the presentation, feel free to send an email request for a full presentation, and we will also be posting the recording of this presentation online on our website. Without any further ado, let me proceed to telling you about the rules of the webinar. So we will have 5 presentations, roughly 10 minutes each. We're asking everybody to mute their microphones, and which I think everybody's doing already. In order to make this seamless, we would like for people to ask their questions in the instant message field, and we will respond to the questions that will come up during the presentations after the presentation itself. So after each presentation, we'll have a little Q&A. For more in-depth questions that cannot be covered or which you feel have not been covered by our answers or by the presentations themselves, we welcome you to send the questions in the email format to the email address that you see on the screen right now. This is email of Dr. Krejcikov, our head of business development. So in terms of the structure of the webinar, we will start with the introduction that is now ongoing. Then we will proceed with discussing the SWOT of Georgia, then Belarus, Baltic States, Ukraine, and finally Russia. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Jibladze from Georgia, our head of Cromos operations in Georgia. Dr. Jibladze is a very experienced trialist. She is a physician. She has held various positions within the Ministry of Health of Georgia previously, before joining clinical trial ops. We're very happy to have her as the head of Georgian office since last year. Dr. Jibladze, I will now transfer the lead to you, and Sergey, maybe you can help me with that.
Thank you, Vlad. Thank you so much.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, I'm pleased to provide a short information about some features of conducting the clinical trials in Georgia. Georgia is one of the countries with considerable untapped potential in this field, actually, due to a very efficient regulatory review process. Georgia is ideal for conducting the clinical trials, especially for the rescue studies. The existing legislative framework and organization makes the development of clinical trials in the country very promising. Shortly about Georgia. Georgia is located at the crossroads of Western Asia and Eastern Europe and covers a territory of 70,000 square kilometers, and its population is almost 4.5 million. It is bounded to the west by the Black Sea, to the north by Russia, and by Turkey to the south. The capital of Georgia is Tbilisi, and the main population, half of the population living in the urban area, and most of them are Caucasian race. The first clinical trials were conducted in Georgia in 1999. Since then, more than 300 clinical trials were performed in Georgia on the different therapeutic areas. The top nosologies are the cardiology, oncology, neurology, and endocrinology. The significant number of hospitals and doctors have a sufficient experience for proper conduct of clinical trials at the time. Actually, the density of physicians in Georgia is one of the highest in Europe. It's approximately 48 physicians per 10,000 patients. Totally, there are physicians of all specialties, approximately 20,000 here in Georgia. According to the Order of Ministry and Labor, Health and Social Affairs of Georgia, from March 2011, the medical classificators ICD-10, ICP-C, and CSP are to be used in the medical care system of Georgia. One of the metrics of quality of conducting the clinical trials in Georgia is an FDA inspections results. So no voluntary action or official action indicated so far in Georgia. Now we're going to the main strengths for Georgia. Actually, short startup timelines is the most prioritable and remarkable point for the Georgia. It takes approximately 2 months, and one of the factors is that the approval by local ECs precedes approval by the competent authorities. The next one is that no import or export license is needed, neither for IMP nor for lab kits or biological samples for Georgia. A competent authority's approval serves as import-export permit. GCP is recognized as the only guidance for clinical trials in Georgia since August 2009. Easy logistics, which means that all main sites are located just in the 3 cities, Tbilisi, Kutaisi, and Batumi, and it allows to optimize the logistics. A process of custom clearance is very transparent. It takes about 1-2 days and allows using just-in-time using directly to the sites. However, the local depots compliant with good storage practice and GMP are also available in Georgia. Study agreement negotiation and signature process is significantly short and takes about 2-3 weeks, and it might go in parallel with study approval process, and there is no need to submit site study agreements neither to local ECs nor to competent authorities. And also there is no need to wait for study approval before study agreement signature. Agreements are to be signed before SIV or IMP on the site. In most cases, there are 2 separate agreements per site, with the institution and with the investigator. Actually, the majority of clinics in Georgia are private. Those are well equipped with all necessary most advanced medical equipment. It has actually positive influence on the patient care and increases compliance. Due to the limited number of governmental projects, there is a huge population which had to pay the full cost of the medical care from their own pockets, which lead in extremely high expenses. So this is one of the reasons that patients seek the opportunity to participate in clinical trials and receive the advanced treatment. And as a result, we have a high, fast, and qualitative recruitment and low percentage of return of consents. To go to the weaknesses, the first point is to be that most sites are located just in 3 big cities, so it decreases the chance for the patients from rural areas to participate in the clinical trials. It was already mentioned, the GCP is the only guidance for the country to conduct the clinical trials. However, there are no additional country-specific guidelines on clinical trials, and sometimes this is why the additional consultations with the Ministry of Health are needed regarding the study-specific issues. According to the Administrative Code of Georgia, all documents submitted to a Ministry of Health must be translated and notarized as well. As a consequence, for example, the direct submission of safety information via fax or email is not possible and is to be done via local CRO. As for the opportunities, here is a really big population of treatment-naive patients and the constantly growing market. The number of new clinical trials increases year by year in Georgia. And so the number of highly qualified and experienced sites is increasing as well. One of the advantages for Georgia is the low investigators fee and very motivated patients and sites. And also it should be mentioned that the climate is very positive toward the clinical trials in Georgia. To go to the next point, Georgia already signed the Euro Association Agreement in June, and so implementation some of the points into the local legislation should be done during the next 5 years. So it may cause the increasing the CA or EC review timelines to synchronize them with the European timelines. This is shortly about to summarize already, which was already said by me. It's that Georgia really has a huge potential for clinical trials. Development of clinical trials in the country is very promising to take into consideration the very short timelines for study startup and the sufficient number of qualified hospitals and doctors. And the next point for how to summarize is a high and fast recruitment and big quality of conducting the trials. High quality of conducting the trials. It makes Georgia very attractive for performing the clinical trials in this country. Actually, this is shortly what I can say about Georgia. Thank you for your attention. Questions, please.
Excellent. Sergey, I'm maybe not seeing the questions or they're not coming in yet. Can you comment on that?
However, there is a short question from one of our participants. There is a question to you. Should the submitter be a local company? So as far as I understand, should be a Georgian company to submit the documents to the Ministry of Healthcare.
Yes, I see. Actually, the submitter should be a local company or individual entrepreneur. As for the Georgia legislation, foreign company or branch or representative is not considered as legal entity, and therefore can't conduct legal activities on behalf of company. So submitter should be a local company or individual entrepreneur. It's a mandatory.
Okay. Now I do see the screens. I apologize. So the follow-up questions from Maxime is any specific requirements for the labeling of IMP?
Actually, there is no specific requirements for labeling of IMP, but GMP Annex 30 recommendations. It's a Section 26. No additional requirements for Georgia for labeling of IMP.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Tsura. I think this is all the questions that we have right now. Without delays, let's proceed to the next country. And again, if any of the guests have any sort of post-facto questions.
One more question.
Oh, there is one more?
Yes.
Sorry.
It's a total per patient cost regarding that. It's approximately 70% from the comparing to the other countries, for example, from America or the European Union countries here in Georgia.
But actually, the question is a little more specific, and now I see it as well. What are the costs comparing to the CIS countries? In relative units, obviously. Meaning that if you compare, Georgia to other post-Soviet bloc or post-Soviet countries, how do you believe the cost stacks up against other countries?
Actually, costs in post-Soviet countries are the more or less same for the patients.
Okay, so you would say that Georgia is pretty much on par with the rest of the post-Soviet countries, and I think that we can probably attest to the accuracy of that statement in terms of investigator fees and pass-throughs and etc. I think you were correct. We are pretty much on par in Georgia. Well, thank you very much, sir, and let's move on to the next presentation. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that if any questions arise later, please proceed to just typing them in, and we will respond to them after all the presentations have been completed. Thank you. So the next presentation is about country specialist in Belarus, Irina Murashko. She has been with us for the last couple of years, and she's an expert on this country. She previously led all of the Belarus efforts for a very large CRO, and she's located in Smolensk, Russia, which is right on the border with Belarus. This is the location which we've chosen to monitor all of our Belarus activities, and she will be telling us about this not very well-known location for clinical trials. So, Irina, please proceed.
Thank you, Vlad. I want to say that it's a great pleasure and honor for me to represent Belarus today for you all. So let me start with a rather brief overview of this country, just to bring it to mind. So the Republic of Belarus is situated in Eastern Europe and is bordered by Russia to the northeast, by Ukraine to the south, by Poland to the west, and by Latvia and Lithuania to the northwest. The population of this country is about 10 million, with more than 10 million inhabitants residing in its capital, Minsk. Russian as well as Belarusian are the two official languages of this country, whereas I should say that over 70% of the population speak Russian. Definitely, it's fair to say that Belarus today gathers steam and actually is becoming a new player in international clinical research. And let me prove this. One of the main advantages of this country, but not the only one, of course, is that study startup timelines are really rather short. The maximum period from submission to study approval is 98 days, and from submission to first site initiation takes approximately 112 days. And these figures, of course, are rather cautious, because in practice study launch takes place in less than 3 months. And if we compare the timelines in different countries, we will see that only Georgia can beat Belarus in this respect. Indeed, Georgia and Belarus are irrevocable champions in a swift and smooth study startup. Next advantage of this country is in healthcare system, which has retained the peculiarities of the Soviet one. You know, it's a highly centralized and hierarchical system with regional, district and republican medical institutions. And patients are sent to this or that hospital level depending on disease severity. So if you are looking for patients with a certain nosology, especially with a rare one, you can address to a hospital on a republic level. And patients from all over the country are gathered and treated there. There are more than 60 accredited clinical trial sites in Belarus with modernized facilities and equipment. Moreover, there are also specialized hospitals with access to targeted patient populations. On the other hand, medical standards in Belarus are similar to European medical practice, and all the studies are conducted in accordance with GCP. And of course, I should say that it's really a great pleasure to conduct studies in Belarus, because here we deal with well-trained and enthusiastic professionals who are always eager to participate. Next strong point is contract negotiation process, which is rather simplified thanks to the fact that only one contract, that is with institution, must be concluded. However, to be honest, this advantage is a little bit tricky because sometimes we deal with decreasing motivation from the side of investigators. Under such a contract, patients must be paid investigators must be paid not more than 40% of the study grant. Of course, they are sometimes not quite satisfied with it. Rigid political system brings stability right here, right now, as no violations are possible. However, you never know what will happen tomorrow, because the line of policy in this country wholly depends on the opinion and decision of one person, of the country leader. So, on the whole, in this country, we deal with a rather positive attitude of the Ministry of Healthcare towards clinical trials, which aims at creating a favorable and even friendly atmosphere towards clinical research, mainly because of the fact that this country is interested in raising additional investment from abroad. Isn't it an advantage? It really is. So, and there is also one strong point left I want to say a few words about, that is costs of cost. So the costs in Belarus are rather competitive, mainly due to the fact that the majority of sites are located in Minsk and travel expenses are insignificant. But of course, we should understand that each medal has its reverse side. The population of this country is relatively small if we compare the one with the population in Russia. However, it never precludes substantial recruitment rates, mainly because of a very positive attitude on clinical research by both patients and physicians. The study-specific contract template must be approved by the Ministry of Healthcare, as well as contracts per each site. And this is, of course, a rather time-consuming option. The Ministry of Healthcare approval must be also obtained for each drug importation. Study materials should be cleared at customs, even in case they are imported from Russia. Of course, it's not rather convenient. And the last thing I'd like to touch upon is limited number of trained CRAs. Luckily, the solution to this problem is easily found in monitoring this country from Russia and Ukraine. For example, here in Cromos we have an office which is located in Smolensk. It's just in the borderline between Russia and Belarus, and it's very convenient and not expensive to monitor this country from our office. So, the reasons of the growing popularity of Belarusian clinical research also lie in the opportunities which this country offers today. As soon as Belarus has remained behind clinical trials for a long period of time, nowadays there are practically no competitive studies in this region. If you are looking for treatment-naive patients, Belarus is an ideal place for that. What's more, Russian being an official language of this country also allows for easy monitoring this country from Russia. and it alleviates the necessity for additional translations into Belarusian. But this, of course, is relevant when the study is conducted in Russia and in Belarus. It's common knowledge that salaries of investigators, of healthcare professionals, are not very high in this country, and that is why we deal with rather motivated professionals who are always eager to participate. And on the other hand, for many patients, participation in clinical trials gives the unique and sometimes even the only opportunity to get the most modern treatment. And of course, oncology takes up a special role, a special position in this country as an echo from the Chernobyl disaster. Nowadays, there are about 260,000 oncological patients registered, with more than 90,000 patients treated annually. For the treatment purposes, there exist 9 large accredited oncological hospitals with clinical trial experience. It's also very important to say that all the sites are well equipped with computer tomography, MRI, X-ray digital systems, and mammography and other equipment. And for the time being, there exists only one main threat, which is in a rigid political system. Actually, I have already touched it upon. It's next to impossible to anticipate the line of policy. Well, of course, we hope that it always will be rather favorable for clinical research, and it always will be rather an advantage than disadvantage of this country. But you never know what will be tomorrow. So, and summing up, I should say that in spite of all the disadvantages of this country, such as necessity to get all the contracts approved by the Ministry of Healthcare, or necessity to get approval for each drug importation, the popularity of Belarus increases rapidly thanks to the number of strong points this country can boast of. And that is, first of all, a rather short startup period. So in practice, it means that when undertaking a clinical trial in several countries, you can always boast of early start of enrollment, thanks to Belarusian sites which are sure to be initiated first. And other countries will join the study a little bit later. There are also a lot of treatment-naive patients. That is an advantage. You never have problems with treatment-naive population. The legislation of this country is compliant with GCP, and all the studies are conducted in accordance with its guidelines. So on the whole, the atmosphere of Belarus is rather favorable for clinical research, thanks to a positive attitude of the Ministry of Healthcare towards clinical trials. So, if you're looking for a very good place for clinical research for your study, this is sure to be conducted in Belarus. You're always welcome. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Or, I see.
Okay, so for those who cannot see the question, let me quickly read it. What are the main driven factors for investigators to participate in clinical trial if their financial interest is low due to no direct contract with them? And what is the leverage for CRO to manage them to complete their job at time or on time? And we're talking about enrollment here. So, Irina, please touch upon this. But let me just quickly jump in and add something that has not been mentioned. The situation that we see in Belarus today with the 40% allowance of the total grant going to the investigator is actually a substantial improvement, and this is relatively new. I think this new legislation came in April of this year, which really opened up this country, because previously it was, I think, and Irina, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 10% of the total grant going to the investigators, which completely negated their interest in participating in the trial. With a 40% allowance, the interest is definitely on the rise. So, Irina, I'll pass it on to you. Please answer the question by Ekron. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Thank you for the question. Of course, we are always trying to indicate in the contract that investigators will be paid this 40%, so the maximum figure. Sometimes institutions are against it, but still we try to negotiate it and indicate the sum. And be sure for investigators in Belarus, this money is a very good, amount. So they're rather motivated by this. Because some time ago, the percentage was about 10% of the total grant. Nowadays it's 40, and it's quite all right for them, be sure. So...
Just one more question. Could you please confirm if central EC approval is required in Belarus?
Thank you for the question again. No, there is no central ethics committee in Belarus. Nowadays there exist only local committees, ethics committees, and we submit documents into local ethics committees only after the Ministry of Healthcare approval is received.
And Irina, just to maybe touch upon, from my understanding, we don't really get any significant pushback after the Ministry of Health has approved the trial. We don't really get a lot of queries from the local ECs on the trials.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's also important to say that it's impossible to submit documents in parallel to the Ministry of Healthcare and to local ethics committees. It may be done only after the approval from the Ministry of Healthcare is received.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think we should move along because we're slightly behind the schedule. So can we please load up the next presentation?
Now the next presentation is about the Baltic States, and Vlad, it's now your turn.
Yes, so I'm the one who's picking it up. Okay, got you. One moment. All right, so I will be briefly talking about the Baltic countries. Those are also former Soviet republics, and they're quite different, let's put it this way, and they've always been quite different from the rest of the Soviet Union. They were the most recent addition to the Soviet Empire, and they were the most eager ones to part ways with the Soviet Empire, which I cannot really blame them for. So we're talking about three countries: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They are relatively small countries, but they do play a significant role in international clinical trials, and are relatively active, especially in certain disease indications. Estonia is the smallest of three. Its population is only 1.3 million. But it has a rather robust number of clinical trials ongoing. As you can see, 107 trials right now. The Latvian population is 2 million, and we're having the most recent update from clinicaltrials.gov. They have 101 trials, and Lithuania, with 3 million, is at 122 ongoing clinical trials, which, if you compare to other post-Soviet countries, those numbers per capita are higher than what you see in other locations. So what is different about Baltic states? Baltic states are the only location within post-Soviet countries where there's full compliance with European laws and regulations, because all three countries are part of the EU. They do have a pretty short and very similar timelines for regulatory startup activities. All three countries, and this is why we sort of kind of lumped them together, because they're very similar in how they approach clinical trials. They all have a rather favorable legal environment, specifically for medical device studies. The genesis of this is not really entirely known, but we've been rather successful in clinical trials on the devices, and this is a pretty well-known fact. Another strength of conducting clinical trials in Baltic States is that when you're importing the drug from any of the EU countries, you don't really need any importation license, which definitely simplifies and speeds up the process of clinical trial startup. Given the small size of the countries, and especially if the drug shipments are taking place from a European hub, the shipments to sites are very much acceptable, and there is no need for local depot storage. The data quality is high. The overall level of care in Baltic States is rather strong. The sites are very well equipped. The PIs are also quite motivated. They see this as a major engagement that allows them to both supplement their income and also be part of the international clinical trial community. The political system in all three countries is rather stable. They're all backed by EU, and they're part of NATO. Which now is becoming a bit of an issue, obviously. Only central ethics committee approval is required, so you don't need to have an extra step of approaching local sites for EC approval. So what are the weaknesses of these three countries? Clearly, the number one weakness is that cumulatively their population is rather small, and that also results in a rather small number of clinical sites that are available. Because of the way the system is set up, there are certain private sites and private institutions that are also participating in clinical trials. They do not really produce robust numbers of patients, and their recruitment rates can be rather small. For Lithuania specifically, you do need an additional improvement from the Personal Data Protection Inspectorate, which is not a terrible roadblock, but it is an extra bureaucratic step that is required. So what are the opportunities? Despite the fact that the clinical trial activity is rather robust, it's still nowhere near that of the United States or Western Europe. There are certain diseases that have high prevalence. For instance, what is mentioned here, given their humid climate, the rate of community-acquired pneumonia is rather high. And they also have, similarly to some of the small European countries, they have certain strengths in some of the indications, such as, for instance, hematology, and very strong key opinion leaders that are internationally recognized. So another opportunity here is that direct payments to medical institutions from abroad, which is in a lot of places in the post-Soviet space is a difficulty, and you need a local vendor to sort of liaise with the sites. Here, this is not an issue, and direct payments from any country from abroad is allowed, and again speeds up and simplifies the logistics of the clinical trial. The translations are only required for protocol summary, which again both simplifies the application process and makes it less expensive, and obviously the sponsor saves on translation costs and on the speed of preparation of the documents. So what are the threats? Clearly, again, the biggest downside to conducting clinical trials is that you have to expect that when you go into these countries that the recruitment, total recruitment will be limited to the number of patients in this country, in these countries. So if you compare all three republics to, let's say, Russia or Ukraine, the number of patients available is much less. But again, for certain niche indications and for specific etiologies, those three countries definitely are very interesting and should be looked at. So in summary, Baltic states have short startup times. They're completely EU compliant. They have very favorable legal environment for medical device studies, as we already mentioned. They have very high quality of data, very much compatible to Western Europe. But you know, the downside, as we've mentioned, is a limited pool of patients given the small sizes of each country. With this, I'll stop. I know we're slightly behind schedule, so let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions as of now. Thank you very much. Let's, maybe without any further delays, move to the next presentation.
Andrei, please take a lead about the Ukraine.
Okay, so let's see. So the next presentation is on Ukraine, and it's by our country head, Andrei Pavlychuk, who is located in Kiev, Ukraine, and he'll be telling us about the SWOT analysis of Ukraine as it stands today. Andrei is a very experienced clinical trial manager. He's been in clinical trials for now over 10 years, and we're lucky to have him. He joined us relatively recently after being the head of a local head of another large CRO. So, Andrei, welcome and thank you.
Okay, so let's start. Ukraine is a country in Eastern Europe which has an approximately area of 600,000 square kilometers, making it the largest country entirely within Europe. Ukraine borders Russia to the east and northeast, Belarus to the northwest, Poland, Slovakia and Hungary to the west, Romania and Moldova to the southwest, and the Black Sea and Sea of Azov to the south and southeast respectively. The population is approximately 45 million, and the capital is Kiev. So, being the central country in the Eastern Europe, Ukraine is an attractive place to conduct the clinical trials. Since the first clinical trial started in the 90s, more than 1,000 international clinical trials have been conducted in Ukraine. Availability of more than 1,500 trial sites with experience in clinical trials, as well as fully GCP harmonized legislation, provides wide opportunities to both sponsors and CROs. In addition, all of top 20 CROs have offices in Ukraine. So, while talking about the key strengths of Ukraine as a place to conduct your clinical trial, we should mention the large patient pool. With a population of more than 45 million, the country represents the second largest patient pool after Russia in Eastern Europe, that make it easier and faster to recruit patients. Also, the strong healthcare system with a centralized structure and vertical referral system, which implies that principal investigators can recruit patients from the regional population without any competition inside. both primary and specialist care is structured around big hospitals and encompasses a large population. Ukraine's strong healthcare infrastructure also gives it an extra edge over its neighboring countries in conducting clinical trials. In 2013, there were almost 10 doctors and almost 5 hospital beds per each 1,000 people, which is larger not only by developing country standards but also by Western European standards. Also, we should admit the comparatively low number of competitive clinical trials and very robust enrollment. The number of competitive clinical trials is significantly fewer than compared to the United States and Western Europe, leaving enough space for notably high enrollment rates and possibility still with JAK-naive patients in many therapeutic areas. In many cases, Ukraine was like a rescue country for such clinical trials. Ukrainian regulatory legislation is fully harmonized with ICH-GCP principles, and the ICH-GCP is issued as a national standard which is obligatory to be used into routine practice by investigators. The high level of qualification of investigators for conducting clinical trials is also a very big advantage, and as a result we have the high quality of clinical trial data. In regard to saving the cost, we should admit that the average per patient cost is significantly lower than in Western Europe and the United States, and it is possible to reduce clinical trial expenditure by using local CROs and labs. While talking about the weaknesses, we should mention that the new innovative methodologies and techniques are implemented after it has been done in the United States and EU. Also, some high-tech medical equipment like PET scanners, plasmapheresis equipment is available only at few clinics. It limits the number of sites which could be involved in these specific clinical trials. Also, the government coverage of some concomitant medications is limited or absent. As a consequence, the sponsor have to cover these expenses for study subjects. The unregistered medicines which are imported into Ukraine should be paid the VAT tax. So, as a result, it could increase the total expenditures. Another weakness is the regulatory aspect that the competent authorities require IMPD submission as a part of initial study application. This would negatively affect those studies for which the IMPD has not been completed yet. In regards to the opportunities at the present moment, we have the fact that the Ukrainian government has signed the association agreement with the European Union. It opens the new opportunities for the market development and the removal of trade barriers. The possible outcome is a shortening of the total timelines for customs procedures as well. Also, the wide implementation of the IT approach into the routine activities of the competent authorities allows easier and faster communication with the competent authorities. Also, it would allow total timelines shortening. The main threat nowadays is the political instability in the eastern regions and annexation of Crimea, which would negatively affect the investments climate and sponsors' expectations. An adequate response strategy to this threat is to enroll sites in the western and central regions of Ukraine. So, as a summary, we should admit a large population of potential subjects and robust enrollment, which, together with the favorable regulatory legislation, opens the new perspectives for all market players. Thank you, and well, you are welcome to ask questions if any.
Thank you, Andrei. I do not see any questions at the moment.
Let me jump in. Here is Vladimir. I just received a question via email, probably with somebody who is on the phone. Just a second, I will read. I will type it in the
Well,
box.
actually, maybe you can, Vladimir, maybe you can just read it to us.
Okay. So, could you please provide some details about pediatric studies in Ukraine? Is it possible, and what is the position of competent authorities?
In regards to pediatric studies, the local legislation is in accordance with those in the EU. However, there are some peculiarities, like the fact that according to the legislation, the subject, the patient could be enrolled in the study only when both parents gives a consent. And as nowadays there is a hot discussion between the CROs and competent authorities how to handle the cases which do not lie in line with this statement. But according to the statistics, we had like a couple years ago during the international conference with the competent authorities, and they informed that like 10% of clinical trials conducted in Ukraine are pediatric trials.
Thank you, Andrei. Let's move on to our last presentation. And I also wanted to reiterate that for people who want to get the slide decks that have been presented today, please send an email to Vladimir. And Vladimir, maybe you can also put your email address in the announcement board so people can send you requests for the presentations. So our last presenter is Vladimir Krachikov. Dr. Krachikov is our Director of Business Development for Russia. He is a veteran of clinical trials. He's been in clinical trials for, if I'm not mistaken, for now over 15 years. He is a former director at a large CRO. He's been with Cromos for the last 4 years. And we're very, very happy to have him on board. And Vladimir will be talking about SWOT analysis of clinical trials in Russia. Vladimir, please take the lead.
Okay, well, thanks for introduction. Let's start about Russia. So, few words. So, Russia still is one of the largest countries in the geography. But if we talk about the population, it's probably the 9th country in the world with more than 140 million, and most of them located in the European part of the country, and 12 million, its official figure, or non-official like 15 million are located in Moscow, in the capital of the country. And plenty of medical institutions have accreditation to conduct clinical trials. Currently, it's more than 1,100 hospitals and scientific research institutions which can conduct trials in various therapeutic areas. And if we look on the number of studies conducted so far, it's more than 2,700 since early 2000. Every year, about 300, 400 international clinical trials are approved in Russia, so the market is quite huge. And the strength of the country is that the pool of potential subjects for clinical trials is very huge, and this allows us to conduct trials in various therapeutic areas and allows to have very robust enrollment in Russian sites. Regarding the healthcare system, it's very centralized, like in Belarus, and we have like regional medical institutions in every therapeutic area, like in oncology, in cardiology, in rheumatology, and etc. And we have national medical institutions where all patients with exact nosology are are collected, and you can open just one site where you can have plenty of patients. Because we have such huge number of studies and so many medical institutions, the pool of very trained and experienced investigators is also very large. Currently, more than 2,000 investigators are registered as principal investigators at the Ministry of Healthcare. If we look at the legislation in general, it's in compliance with ICA-GCP, and due to very experienced investigators, the quality of that is very good, and more than 50 FDA inspections were done in the last 5 years, and you have seen this slide in presentation about Georgia, where Russia also was included, and no voluntary and no official action indicated so far in these inspections. And also I would like to notice that staff at CROs and pharma companies is very experienced, and most of them are medical doctors, and many of them have PhD degree, and that's why allows them to speak on the same language with investigators and get better results and better quality. If we talk about weakness of Russia in terms of clinical trials, this is additional requirements from the Ministry of Healthcare to investigators' brochure in terms of non-clinical studies. They're quite specific, and for most of current innovative drugs, this is not a problem, but for some old drugs, this could be a potential problem. Also, customs clearance and requirement of import-export license is another weakness of Russian Federation, but currently the process is quite clear and understandable, and if you have the right partner in terms of customs clearance, so you won't have any problems and issues there. Another thing which should be noted is that medical institutions do not accept payment from abroad, so you need a local partner to perform payments to medical institutions, while investigators can get money from abroad. In terms of regulatory approval, it's about 3 to 4 months. I mean, from the moment of submission till the moment of receipt of study approval, but extra 1 month should be added to translation of the documents, because the whole package should be translated into Russian. It's like an investigator's brochure, protocol, patient materials, and etc. And also, due to large territory of the country, geographical distribution of site is very significant, and the distance between sites may be 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers, and this is not an easy logistics for CRAs and for courier service companies. So despite many trials are ongoing at the moment, but still, if we compare Russia to US or even to Poland, so the situation of clinical trials market is not so good. So there are a lot of space for new trials and for new sponsors in this country. And for the population is treatment naive in many nosologies, and this can be an extra opportunity for the client and extra point to include Russia in the clinical programs. And another thing which should be noted, that according to legislation, if the sponsor conducts the study in phase 2 or 3 with participation of Russian subjects, so it would be much easier to register the drug afterwards in Russia. Otherwise, you need to make a separate study in this country. And the main threat at the moment is political situation and sanctions from United States and from European Union. And currently, we have no issues with clinical trial market, but nobody knows what's going in future. So this could be a potential threat for the clinical trials market in Russia. And to summarize my speech, so Russia gives a huge population of potential subjects, and this allows very rapid and robust enrollment, the station is compliant with ICA-GCP, the quality of data is very high, and investigators are quite motivated and well experienced. But on the other hand, currently there are political risks related to crisis between Russia and Ukraine. So I would like to thank you for your time, and it seems to me that I'm just in time, and I was quite fast.
Thank you, Vladimir. There's a question from Paulo. Based on our past experience, regulatory approval procedure is very long and complicated. What is the current situation?
So nowadays, maybe it was a situation in 2010, 2011 when the new law came into force, but nowadays the situation is the procedure is quite streamlined. So the only thing you need to obey the procedure and to provide the documents which are required by the law. And so in 3 and 4 months you will get an approval. Probably our experience in Russia is that the fastest approval we got, it was like 2.5 months. So nowadays I would like to stress it's quite streamless and understandable.
Great. Thank you, Vladimir. Just, I wanted to maybe say a couple of words about the situation in Russia and the situation in Ukraine, where we've covered both countries. It's a tremendous pity that, the situation has escalated so much, and we're watching it very closely. And our heart goes out to people of Ukraine, and we're very concerned with the loss of life, etc. I want to stress out that for Russia, for instance, again, we're monitoring the situation very carefully. Clinical trials historically have been one of those areas that where any type of political influence or political repercussions are avoided. It is one of those areas where it is not seen by the government as a leverageable point, but again, no one knows what will come if the situation does not de-escalate, which we very much hope for, and we will be updating everybody on how things develop. I can say that for now, both the regulatory timelines and the general climate remain pretty favorable in both countries. And I'm talking about Western Ukraine and the whole of Russia. But again, this is something that we're very concerned about, and unfortunately, in a lot of ways, this is not in our control, and we will remain very optimistic that a political solution can be reached. But this is definitely sort of a proverbial elephant in the room right now, and is a sort of source of worries, I think, for the whole international community. With this, I would like to thank all of the participants and all of our presenters, and thank you for your thank you note. Again, if you are interested in receiving the slide decks from this presentation, or if you have any specific questions on any country that has been presented, please feel free to send an email to Dr. Krechikov, and we will respond in real time. And we hope that this was useful. I see that there are 2 people who are typing their notes. Let's see if this is just a thank you note, or a dissatisfaction note, or maybe there are additional questions. Let's see. Okay, thank you. And again, guys, I very much appreciate your time, and that you found to join us. So again, another thank you note, and I think at this point we can probably adjourn, and we'll respond to your emails as they come. Thank you very much.